Hello, this is Zhiyu, and this video is about how to make a demographics table. And first of all, let's take a look at the table shell. For the title, we have Table 1, Demographics and Baseline Characteristics for ITT Population. And for the table itself, we have 5 columns, the variables, treatment 1, treatment 2, and the total, and also the p-value. For the variables, we have 2 classes. We have categorical variables, including the gender, the race, and for these two guys, we're going to calculate the counts and the percentages. And the others are age, height, weight, and BMI, and these are continuous variable. And we're going to calculate the descriptive statistics here, including the counts, the mean, the median, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum. And don't forget at the end we need to include footnotes, and that's pretty much it for the table shell. And let's go ahead to the code part. And for the code, the first thing is to import the source data to SAS, and I'm using the proc import to do that. So the data we're going to use is demug data and vitals, and these two are Excel files. And since we don't have age as a variable in the Excel files, we need to calculate that, and that's where these informats come into rescue. And in this proc SQL step, calculate the age and the BMI, and with these two calculated, we have all the data we need to make the table. So before we do that, this macro here is actually recording the units for heights, for the weights, for BMI into the macro, now which is going to be convenient later on when we producing the table. And for this part is to count the actual subject numbers for each treatment group and also the total subject number. And the strategy of making the demographics table that I used here is to prepare the table block by block. So for each particular block, I only extract the information that's needed. And for example, for the first two blocks, they are the gender and the race blocks. And I just get the information that's needed for these two blocks. And then since we are using, we need to calculate the number and percentages, we're going to use proc_freq to help us do that. And remember, we have to fit the data into the table shell, so we need to transpose the data to fit into the table setting. And after we have the number and percentages, we need to calculate the p-value. In this case, we're going to use the Fisher's exact test. And since we are having very small cell counts, we have to use Fisher's exact test. After we have the p-value, we're going to combine the p-value with the number and percentages to make these two blocks complete, and that's where this my combine macro comes into play. And once we're done with the categorical variables, we're going to deal with a continuous variable. And for the continuous variable, we're going to calculate the descriptive statistics. So we're going to use proc univariate to do that. And once again, we have to fit into the table settings, so we're going to transpose the data. And for the p-value calculation, we're going to use ANOVA type 3 SS to do that. Once we have the p-value, we're going to combine the p-value with the descriptive statistics to finalize the blocks. And once we have that done, all the blocks are prepared, so we're going to pull all the blocks together into one data set, and that's what this data step is doing right here. And take a look at this code here. This is basically using one variable to specify a particular particular blocks, which is going to be used later on in the proc report to make the break between the blocks. And for this part here is to specify where you want to make a page break. And we're going to see that later on in the proc reports. And before we do the proc reports to generate the data, we're going to specify some options to make sure everything is right. And I have to mention here that I'm not using the proc template in this code, so I specify all the styles that are needed in the title, in the footnotes, and also in the proc reports. So for the title and the footnotes, just basically just list whatever is requested in the table shell. And for the proc report, after specifying the options, we need to specify the style. So basically that's the final layout of the table. And after that, we're going to specify the columns. And for here, I need to mention that for the val name is actually meaning the variables, C1 for treatment 1, C2 for treatment 2, and C3 for total, and p-value for the p-value column. For the first two variable, the myPage and group, we don't actually need them to be printed in the final table, so we specify no print in the defined statements. We just need them to be listed as in the order. And for all the others, we need to print them in the final table. So we need to specify display, and also the column label is basically what is listed in the table shell. And for these are the specific styles that is needed for these columns. And for this part of code is about the indentation. So if you take a look at the table shell here, you see we do have indentation in these specific categories and also in these descriptive statistics. So what I did here is to create a little macro ahead of time to record the row name, row head. I mean row head. So for these guys, they are the row head. So what this step is doing is, if they are not in any of these row head, then we need to make an indentation. If they are any of these row head, then there's no indentation. So that's how the indentation works. And after that, we need to break the page, since one page is not enough. And that's where this variable comes into play that controls exactly where you want to have the page break. And also in the table shell, as you can see, between the blocks we have a blank line inserted to separate them. So that's where we're going to use, that's why we're going to use a group to specify that. We're going to put a blank line after each group. And that's pretty much it for the table. We have the title, we have the footnotes, and we have the main body of the table, and we have the page break, the line break, we have the indentation. Everything is ready, and then let's go ahead and run this code and to generate our table. Alright. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you can see here we have the title and 5 columns variable, treatment 1, treatment 2, total, and p-value. For the gender, we have the number, and for gender and race, we have number and percentages. And for age, height, weight, and BMI, we have the descriptive statistics. And also we do have the p-value for each of the blocks. And also we have the footnotes. And that completes our demographics table. And that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Thank you.